Alfred Hitchcock called Exposition the bitter pill, because yeah, every movie needs it, but it tastes like shit. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to make your exposition exciting and make it so it won't bore your audience or Alfred Hitchcock or anybody else. And in the end, the last one is going to be the absolute, this was a game changer for me, okay? If you don't know me, I've been teaching writing for a long time. I'm doing these videos as a amplification of my classes. If you stumbled upon here, you're not one of my students, great. We're talking about everything about writing, whether screenwriting or novels or storytelling in any way. Exposition is basically everything you need to know in order to operate, so your audience understands what's happening in the story. A lot of writers make the mistake of thinking that the audience is excited and thrilled for information, but we're not here for information. We're here for entertainment. And movies aren't even very good at information because they kind of speed past it, right? Like if you don't catch something, you can't really, like, if you sit in a movie theater, you can't pause and rewind. You do it at home, yeah, but your partner's gonna like kick in the nuts. It's really annoying. One of the things that writers make a mistake with is they dump all the exposition out right away. You don't want to think that the audience is like really wants and needs this information all at once. You can dole it out in little tiny doses. If you actually think about the movie Memento, right? It requires a bunch of information. We need to know that he's had an accident where his wife has been murdered, and we need to know that he's looking for a guy named John G. We need to know about his condition. We need to know about Sammy Jenkins. But Christopher Nolan doesn't just dump this on us. He gives it to us in little tiny doses. It's 5-10 minutes before we really find out about Leonard's condition. It's another 15 before we find out that Leonard's wife has been murdered. And it's another, 30-40 before we find out the Sammy Jenkins story. So what they did wisely is, the reality is a lot of writers think we need the information, get it out right away, but the reality is actually the questions the audience is asking is what draws us along. It's like not knowing is what draws us along. So, you can do it to a point where it frustrates the audience. You don't want to do that, but you give them a little dose of information, leads them along to want the next. This is especially huge for you fantasy writers out there, right? A lot of times a fantasy world will have this giant exposition dump in the beginning of the story, huge prologue, and sure, it works for the Lord of the Rings movie, but for the most part, it doesn't work. And I think one of the really good examples of this, if you've read His Dark Materials, like that is a completely unique world. We've got this character Lyra Silvertongue, who's got a little demon, which is like a creature, looks like a meerkat hanging out on her shoulder, and it's talking. And the first time we see her, we are just dropped off. We're with a little girl and her pet, and they're hiding out and overhearing some shit they didn't know. We don't know anything about the world. We don't know about the ministry. We don't know about all the world building. We find that out later. What the reality is if you can ground your audience by like setting us into a world and attaching us to a character and attaching us to an emotional situation that's kind of familiar, then we'll tolerate not really understanding the world. In fact, we'll be excited by that. Again, you'll be like drawing it out and giving us these little doses. Okay, so this tip comes from the book Save the Cat, and this is called the Pope in the Pool trick. And what the Pope in the Pool trick is, there's a scene in which there's some exposition, and a bunch of expo dump is going on in the audience. And instead of just having it happen, what they did is they put up a little pope. It's a pope, and he's in a pool in the scene. So you're basically, the idea of the Pope in the Pool trick is you're giving your audience something fun to make the scene tolerable, understanding that it's a bitter pill. We're sugarcoating it a little bit. Game of Thrones, for the first 5-6 seasons, was masterful at this. They came up with what's called sexposition, right? Where they would put sex in the background. You have some people talking about some exposition, and there'd be people banging here, people banging there. That didn't fly so well towards the end, and people called them on it, but it kind of worked. Okay, so that's not the best way to do it, though. The Pope in the Pool trick is cool. It's cute. You can have a little Pope in the background. Sure, it can work. Okay, another really good way to do this is to sort of hide the exposition so the audience doesn't even know it's happening. A great example of this would be in the scene from The Social Network, the opening scene. Now, in this opening scene, we basically are dropped in on the middle of a date between Mark Zuckerberg and his date, Erica. And it's not going well because he's really annoying and he's really unlikable. The first thing we hear is finals clubs. I need to get into a finals club. How do I get into a final club? And the conversation becomes about final clubs. Now, his intention here is just to get Erica on his side, to get some sort of, to say to Erica, hey, if you're with me, you know, I'm a big shot. I'm going to get all into the final club and get into all the great parties. And meanwhile, she just wants him to be normal. She just wants to have a normal night with her, you know, the guy she's dating. And what happens is he's basically trying to win her over, and throughout the whole conversation, we slip in all these details. We learn about the final clubs. We learn about how important those are. We learn that he doesn't like guys who row rowboats. We learned that his best friend Eduardo made $300,000. Eduardo's the guy who's going to give him the money. So we're learning all of this, but it feels like a natural conversation between a guy trying to impress a girl and failing miserably. So it works really, really well. Another great example of this idea is the scene in Pulp Fiction where Jules and Vince are walking upstairs to shoot somebody, right? So they're about to pop a cap in somebody's ass, okay? So I don't know what I'm going to say. As they go up the stairs, they're sitting there going, they start talking. Then it sounds like they're just shooting the shit. It's all about, in fact, most people watching this movie will go, this scene's meaningless. It's just a goofy scene about foot massages and force and the sitcom that Mia Wallace was on. But as we go, we learn everything. We learn who Mia Wallace is. She was on a TV show, which means she's probably very attractive. We learn that if you mess with her, her husband will throw you off a building. We learn that Vince has been tasked with taking her out on a date. And we also know Vince is a drug addict. So we've got all the exposition in what actually just felt like a scene between two guys shooting the shit, trying to, one-up each other. And the absolute best method of exposition is what we're going to call dramatizing exposition. This is from the book Story by Robert McKee. This was a game changer for me, so I highly recommend you check it out. I'm going to translate a little bit because it's kind of confusing. Robert McKee basically suggests that you should dramatize exposition, okay? And this is going to be the game changer. I think this is the thing that makes exposition really work. And basically he says you have to dramatize exposition. And the worst thing you could have is the plot stops, and then two people talked, and it's very clear when they're talking. It's like, hey, why do I need to know this? Oh, because the audience also needs to know that, right? So you're saying, hey, that we were, remember how we've been best friends for like 40 years, and we both went to medical school, and you knocked up my sister, and all that kind of thing doesn't play well because we know the audience, because we know the character wouldn't say that to their person because they already know it, so it doesn't really make sense. So what the opposite of this, to dramatize exposition, means what we're going to do is we're going to put the words in the mouth of a person who has to change the behavior of another person. Okay, so this basically plays by one of the rules of dialogue, which is like if I'm speaking not in real life, but in a construct, in a movie or a play or a book. When I'm speaking to change your behavior. I'm trying to change the way you're going to act. So if you think about every bit of exposition as an action being taken in order to change the behavior of the other character in the scene, now that is a really good version of exposition. I'll give you some examples of that. We all know the Ariadne character in Inception is the exposition character. Leads us through the world, and they're the person who's new to the world, and so we're sort of seeing the world through their eyes. that can work, but it can also be really stiff and dull. What now Christopher Nolan understands and does in this movie, Cobb is telling her how the dreams work so he can seduce her into becoming their architect, right? So that's what. So that's his goal, and that's like how an actor works. An actor works by going, "This is what I want from you. Now I'm going to play my intention, and I'm going to try to get what I want from you." So the whole time he's trying to seduce her into joining them. So that gives him something to do. It gives him something to be active. It also gives her something to fight against or struggle against. To give you some of the other examples of this, if you think about possibly the greatest exposition scene of all time, the Council of Elrond from Lord of the Rings. Well, in the book, it's a very long sequence about when we have to get every detail of this, how we're going to get into Mordor and what we need to do, and it could be absolutely devastatingly dull. But what Tolkien understood was he put the words in the mouth of a character who needed to change the behavior of the other characters, right? So you have here Gandalf is coming in, and his goal is, I've got to convince them this is the best way. Now, one of the tricks here is you're going to put opposition characters in the audience, right? So it's like, okay, Gandalf is going to convince them this is the best way. But the humans think, no, this isn't a good way. Let's just go and invade. And the dwarves think, I don't want to work with the elves. The elves don't want to work with the dwarves. And nobody wants to work with the humans. And why you got a hobbit over there? What are they going to do? So now Gandalf is fighting and struggling against everybody's preconceived notions of what's happening. He's going to change their way of thinking, and therefore it plays by the rules of drama, which is, if I'm talking to you to get you to change your behavior in some way. Another great example of this would be in Amadeus, right? We need to learn about the marriage of Figaro. We need to learn about Amadeus. The king wants a opera that is in German, right? But German's not a pretty language and compared to Italian, and so Salieri, the villain, wants it in Italian. And it's a very simple scene, but in the scene we get everything we need to know about the opera and about the dynamics of the people. And what we have here is you have Salieri and then the two foppish dudes in the wigs. They are dead set against this opera being done in German. And then Mozart comes in and he's like, "Oh no, that would be great. I always want to do it in German." He starts playing around, and the goal here is we got to win over. Whoever wins the king wins the scene. And so you've got a real goal, real play going on of people with intentions trying to get what they want from each other. Anyway, that's my take on I'm giving writing advice from various different movies. And you want to check out some more writing advice, check this one out right here.